In today's Steamy Stories episode, an avid listener stumbles upon an intriguingly fun, Hollywood-inspired card game raising funds on Kickstarter called Casting Call. Hesitant at first, the listener wonders if they should click on the Kickstarter link, knowing that a wave of excitement, satisfaction, and adrenaline will wash over them if they do. The supportive listener now wonders where to find the campaign link. Swiftly, the hunky host directs them to the website castingcallthegame.com, where a link resides. Upon clicking the link, a wondrous feeling fills them with satisfaction, now knowing they've not only supported the podcast they adore, but also are about to acquire a hilariously fun, interactive party game called Casting Call. Sounds like quite the tale, right? Well, it's not only a story, but it could be a reality. All of this can happen if you go to castingcallthegame.com and click the link. Take it from me. You'll be glad you did. And now, on to another Steamy Stories for you to enjoy. Upon suffering a heart-wrenching breakup, Luke sought the safety and comfort of his parents' small seaport home. The serene Atlantic waves and salty breeze were supposed to be healing, but loneliness relentlessly loomed over him. That is, until he spotted the enigmatic Hunk, Dade, a ruggedly handsome marine biologist emerging from the surf like a mythical figure. As their paths intertwine over the rescue of a small turtle, Luke finds himself drawn to Dade's quiet strength and mysterious charm. Amidst the backdrop of golden sunsets and ocean whispers, Luke grapples with his feelings, his heart racing between the desire for connection with this studly Adonis and his fear of getting hurt again. Could this summer's end bring a new beginning for him? Or will Luke's fears keep him from embracing a love as deep as the ocean itself? Luke stood on the balcony of his parents' beach house, gazing out at the rolling waves of the Atlantic. The salty breeze rustled his unruly brown hair, causing an unkempt curl to fall into his eyes. He brushed it aside with his hand, revealing a pair of glasses perched precariously towards the tip of his nose. At 25, Luke was lean and toned from his long morning swims in the ocean. His skin was tan from the sun and spattered with faint freckles, remnants of childhood summers spent at the beach. Despite his somewhat nerdy appearance, he was undeniably handsome, heightened by the sharp lines of his jaw and the softness of his lips. He wore simple, comfortable clothes, a well-worn hoodie over a plain t-shirt, jeans that had seen better days, and a pair of Chuck Taylor sneakers. There was an air of quiet intensity about him, reflecting the emotional turmoil he struggled to navigate alone. Returning to his parents' home after an emotionally difficult breakup was supposed to serve as a healing retreat, but so far, all it had done was amplify his feelings of loneliness. The small oceanfront town he grew up in starkly contrasted with the bustling city life he had left behind with his ex-boyfriend. His parents welcomed him with open arms and attempted to give him the space he needed to mend his broken heart. But nothing seemed to help heal the hurt. Each day, Luke wandered the beach, hoping to find solace among the waves and sand, desperate to solve the riddle of how he failed in love. During one of these walks, Luke noticed Dade emerging from the surf. He was hard to miss, standing tall and confident, with a rugged handsomeness that seemed almost out of place in the sleepy town. With his deep tan, muscular body, and dark, piercing eyes, Dade walked onto the sand from the surf, carrying a small net full of shells. His wet swim trunks clung to his firm, powerful legs and glutes, leaving little of his masculinity to the imagination. Luke couldn't help but take in an eyeful as he gasped at the sight of this heavenly Adonis. This was the first time this summer that he had sighting of this elusive stud who visited this sleepy little oceanfront town each year. Dade's appearance was always the talk of the town. Reserved and shy, he always kept to himself and rarely interacted with anyone else. Little was known about him other than his name. He was a marine biologist who would come to town each summer to study the local sea life. Every time Luke saw Dade, he would feel a flutter in his chest. Luke knew that he and this burly hunk of a man most likely had nothing in common, but this shredded stud was too beautiful not to admire. Luke was often amused by how the women in the town all attempted to gain his favor, but failed. Dade seemed to have little interest in anyone or anything other than the turtles in the neighboring surf. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Luke found himself again walking alone along the secluded stretch of beach. The waves lapped gently at his feet, and the salty breeze attempting to settle his troubled mind. Lost in thought, Luke almost missed the slight movements by the water's edge. Peering closer, he saw a sea turtle struggling to free itself from a tangled mess of seaweed and debris. Luke's heart went out to the creature. He knew he couldn't leave it there to struggle, so he climbed into the shallow surf, pulled the mesh that entangled it apart, and gently freed the turtle. It was clear that the small creature was injured. Luke wondered what to do as he cradled it in his arms. It was then that he realized the old lighthouse down at the end of the bluff wasn't far up the beach. If anyone could help, it was most likely the crusty old lighthouse keeper who lived there. Luke cradled the poor, wounded creature in his arms as he struggled through the heavy sand. The small turtle seemed grateful to be held and cared for. If Luke didn't know better, he'd have sworn the little animal was happy to be held and attended to. Luke's heart pounded as he approached the imposing old lighthouse. He hesitated momentarily. His fear of meeting the crusty old lighthouse keeper unnerved him, but the turtle's plight gave him the push he needed. He knocked on the heavy steel door, but there was no response. Perhaps the old man no longer cared for the lighthouse anymore. Very few knew anything of the old seaman other than he was a former ship captain who retired years ago to keep the torch in the lighthouse burning. Luke questioned his decision to walk up the beach all the way to the lighthouse where the creepy old man lived. He now wondered if he had the strength to head back down the coast towards his parents' home while carrying the turtle, if he changed his mind and went back into town. His concern quickly shifted as a loud, creaking sound pierced the quiet. The giant metal door swung open to reveal someone other than the crusty sea captain. Instead of who he expected to find caring for the lighthouse, Dade, the hot young marine biologist, stood shirtless before him. Luke was momentarily breathless at the surprise and sight of the brawny stud before him. An awkward introduction stumbled from his lips. Hi, I'm Luke." Dade took the small gym towel from around his neck and casually towel-dried his hair before tossing the towel to the side. His hair stopped dripping, but his bare, muscular torso was still covered with beads of water. Dade nonchalantly buttoned the top button of his jeans as he returned the greeting. "Hey, I'm Dade. I wasn't expecting company. I was just washing up after doing a few repairs on the seawall. This place is falling apart." Luke was able to be a bit more eloquent with his words as he held up the injured turtle. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but I found this guy on the beach, and he needs help." Dade's attention shifted towards the small animal, while Luke stayed steadily fixated on Dade's perfectly sculpted, muscular chest. Let me see the little guy. You did the right thing by bringing him here." Dade carefully took the turtle from Luke and quickly got to work, examining the turtle with expert hands. Luke watched, fascinated by Dade's skill and knowledge of the animal. "Thank you for bringing him here," Dade said, his dark eyes meeting Luke's. "Nobody comes up this way. Now that my uncle spends his summers with my mom, I don't have any company when I do my research." Luke innocently and tactlessly inquired, "The crusty old lighthouse keeper is your uncle?" Dade busted out into a hearty laugh. "Yeah, that's my uncle. And yes, I guess he's a bit crusty. I spend every summer with him. I guess that's where I learned my love for the sea and its creatures. And now that he's older, he spends more time with my mom, and I care for the lighthouse and study the local sea life." Dade's attention shifted back to the turtle with an injured flipper. Luke looked out the opaque window, mostly covered in salt. "It's getting dark, and the tide is coming in. I really need to get back to my car. Can I leave the turtle with you?" Dade was quick to reply. "Please, yes, of course. He's in good hands. I'll take it from here, but I hope you'll come visit our patient. He may be here for a few weeks." "Sure," Luke replied, already wondering when would be too soon to return. That night he lay in bed thinking of Dade. That man is so hot. I wonder if he's got a girlfriend back where he's from. Luke's thoughts quickly shifted from Dade's social life to his spectacularly sculpted chest. Rows of cut ab muscles lay just below a smattering of golden, sun-bleached hair. "Now that's what a man is supposed to look like," Luke asserted as he lay comfortably in his bed, preparing to recount every inch of Dade's body from memory. Several days later, Luke returned to the lighthouse to visit Dade and his turtle. Dade greeted Luke with a beaming smile and quickly ushered him to see their patient. Dade had lovingly named the turtle Squirt, indicating that Dade was a fan of Disney movies. Squirt was doing great. In fact, he seemed happy to be in Dade's care. I mean, who wouldn't want this ripped hunk caring for them? Luke wondered, as he was careful not to overstay his welcome or telegraph the fact that the more he learned about Dade, the more attractive he found him. Over the next few weeks, Luke returned to the lighthouse more often. Initially, it was to check on the turtle, but soon it became clear that he was drawn to Dade as much as to their shared mission. Dade welcomed him each time, their bond growing stronger with every visit. The two men would spend hours talking, sharing stories of their lives and passions. Luke spoke of his love of the outdoors, the frustrations of moving back in with his parents as an adult, and details about his recent breakup. Dade shared tales of his adventures studying various marine life around the world and his commitment to being single and unattached. One evening, as they sat on the lighthouse balcony watching the sunset, their conversation turned even more personal. The gentle sounds of the waves provided a soothing backdrop as Dade asked, "What happened with your ex, if you don't mind my asking?" Luke sighed, looking out at the horizon. We wanted different things. I thought we were on the same page, but in the end, he wasn't ready for the kind of commitment I wanted from him. Dade nodded, his expression thoughtful. I'm sorry you went through that. Relationships can be tough, especially when your heart's all in. I can relate. That's why I'm still single. Luke glanced at Dade, the sincerity in his eyes making his heart ache. What about you? Have you ever had your heart broken? Although he didn't ask, he hoped that within Dade's answer, he'd discover the mystery of Dade's sexual preferences when it came to a partner. Dade smiled wryly. A few times. Comes with the territory of living life on the move. You connect with someone. It becomes intense, but then I have to leave. It seems inevitable that hearts are going to be broken. That's why I don't get too attached to anyone anymore. It's unfortunate, but I've learned to cherish the connections I make with people no matter how brief, since I know it could never be anything more. Luke respected his answer, but remained frustrated at the mystery of whether he was falling for a straight man or not. Their conversations were peppered with moments of unspoken tension, a magnetic pull that both excited and terrified Luke. He found himself drawn to Dade in a way he hadn't felt in a long time, but knew that if he did, he'd get hurt again. The promise that Dade would only hurt him held him back from opening his heart to him. Luke needed to remind himself constantly that Dade was only here for the summer, and he couldn't afford to let his heart get too involved. One particularly clear night, the two of them decided to take a walk along the beach. The moonlight danced on the waves, creating a magical atmosphere. As they walked, their hands brushed against each other, sending sparks through Luke's body. I've really enjoyed spending time with you, Luke, Dade said, his voice soft but earnest. I've felt a connection I haven't felt in a long time. Before Luke could respond, Dade leaned in and kissed him. It was a tender, yet passionate kiss, filled with unspoken promises and desires. Luke's heart raced, but as much as he wanted to give in, his fears held him back. He pulled away, his mind in turmoil. What's wrong? Dade asked, concern etched on his face. I don't know if I can do this, Luke admitted. I've been hurt before, and you're only here for the summer. I can't go through that again. Dade reached out, touching Luke's arm gently. I understand, Luke. You're right. I'm being selfish. The last thing I want to do is play games with you or hurt you even more than you've already been hurt. Forgive me. Luke smiled, a weak, unconvincing smile as he replied, I'm flattered you want to kiss me, and I want to kiss you back, but it's just best that we stay friends and nothing more. Dade understood and appreciated Luke's position as he gave him an acknowledging nod, and they continued walking down the shore together in silence. The days that followed were filled with a mix of joy and uncertainty. Luke and Dade continued to grow closer, but Luke's fear of getting hurt again kept a barrier between them. Dade was patient, offering reassurance and understanding, but Luke's heart remained guarded. As the summer drew to a close, it was time to return Squirt to his family. Dade invited Luke over to release the small turtle back into the sea. Upon entering the lighthouse, Luke instantly noticed that rather than being cold and austere, the old cement tower had been transformed into a cozy, intimate setting with a small table on the balcony. A two-person dining area was set oceanfront, adorned with a simple yet elegant tablecloth. Candles flickered softly in the still evening air. The aroma of freshly cooked seafood filled the air, mingling with the smell of the salty sea. Soft music played in the background, adding to a romantic ambiance. Luke hesitantly indulged in such an amorous evening. However, he wondered why, after his warnings to Dade that their friendship must remain platonic, he'd go through such trouble to set a romantic setting. They shared a delicious meal, their conversation flowing easily, filled with laughter and shared memories. As the night progressed, the atmosphere grew more tender and intimate. They stood together watching the sunset, the air filled with unspoken tension. Dade took a deep breath, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Luke, I need to tell you something," he began. "I've been thinking a lot, and I realized that I don't want to be without you. I bought the lighthouse from my uncle. He's going to retire and live with my mom. I plan to stay here, and I want you to stay with me." Luke's eyes widened in surprise and joy. You bought the lighthouse?" "Yes," Dade confirmed. "I want us to build a life together here. That is, unless you want to continue living with your folks." Luke fumbled over his words and thoughts as tears of happiness filled his eyes. "I think my parents will be fine without me," Dade softly inquired. "Now, can I have that kiss you denied me on the beach weeks ago?" Luke smiled innocently. "Yeah, I guess so. Since you just spent your life savings on a lighthouse so you can be near me, I guess a little kiss is the least I could do." Dade leaned back with an alarmed look on his face. "A little kiss? Nah, that won't do. You have no idea how much I spent on this old building. I want more than a little kiss. I will, however, take this as a down payment." Dade then pulled Luke towards him. Their lips met with a softness that intensified the depths of their emotions. It started with a delicate brush of the lips that sent shivers down their spines and grew more and more intense. Time seemed to stand still as they savored the moment. Their kiss deepened, becoming more passionate, as if they were pouring all their unspoken words and hidden desires into this single act of intimacy. They finally pulled back, reluctantly, their foreheads resting against each other, eyes still closed as if they basked in the glow of a perfect embrace. A subtle smile played on Dade's lips. Breathless and content, he whispered, "After dinner, we'll go down to the beach and release your little turtle back into the sea." Luke lightheartedly responded, "What turtle? I have no idea what you're talking about. But one thing is clear. You're not leaving this lighthouse until morning." Well, clearly, Luke finding that little turtle on the beach and meeting Dade helped him, come out of his shell? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. You're listening to Steamy Stories, written by J.C. Calciano and narrated by me, Nate. We appreciate you being a part of our humble community and love that you're here with us every month. In the next episode, JC promises to write something extra spicy for you. Personally, I wouldn't miss it. Sooner than you can say, caliente, I'll be back to tell you another Steamy Stories. Later, bro.